She came through that door ready. I could tell from the way she walked in. Shoulders set, jaw slightly forward. The particular posture of someone who has spent a car ride home rehearsing what they are going to say. She had known, when she left that morning, that I had found out. She had known because I had sent her one text, 3 words. I know everything. And then nothing. No follow-up, no call, no second message explaining or expanding or asking for a response. Just those 3 words, and 8 hours of silence. She had spent those 8 hours preparing. For anger, for accusations, for the kind of confrontation that gives a person something to push back against, something to defend herself from, explain herself around, survive. She walked into our living room ready for all of it. And then she looked at the wall, and everything she had prepared became completely useless. Because the wall told her something no fight could have told her. It told her I was already done. The wall. Before my name is Elliot, I am 39 years old, and I need to start this story with a wall. Specifically, the wall in our living room that faced the front door. The first thing you saw when you walked into our home. For 4 years, that wall had held one thing, a large framed photograph, taken on our wedding day, the 2 of us, Diana and me, standing outside the venue in the late afternoon light. Not posed, caught mid-laugh at something someone had said just off camera. Genuine and warm and exactly the kind of image that makes people stop when they visit and say, "You two look so happy there." We had chosen it together, framed it together, hung it together on a Sunday afternoon 2 weeks after we moved in. It had been the first thing I saw every time I came home. For 4 years, I had loved that photograph. Past tense. What I found out on a Thursday morning. Not through a dramatic discovery, not through a confrontation or a confession or a moment designed for revelation, through a notification. Diana had connected her phone to our home network, and her photo backup had been syncing automatically to a shared cloud account we had set up years ago for practical reasons. Holiday photos, home documents, the ordinary archive of a shared life. She had forgotten, or had stopped thinking about it the way you stop thinking about things that have been quietly running in the background for years. I was working from home. I opened the shared folder to find a document, and I found photographs that were not meant for me. I will not describe them in detail. There is no version of that description that serves this story better than the simple truth. They told me everything. Completely, unambiguously, without any possibility of the alternative explanation I might otherwise have reached for. I sat at my desk for a long time after that. I did not call her. Did not text, did not move for approximately 40 minutes. And then I stood up, and I went to the living room, and I took the photograph off the wall. What I put there instead. I want to tell you what I hung in its place, because it matters, and because it was not chosen randomly or in anger or as a performance. It was chosen because it was true. In the spare room, in a box of things I had been meaning to deal with for years, there was a framed print I had bought before I met Diana. A simple piece. Black frame, white background, a single line of text in clean typography. It was a quote I had always liked, about the difference between the life you planned and the life that turns out to be yours. The specific words are not important. What is important is what it represented. It was mine, only mine, from before her, from the version of me that had existed before we had stood in late afternoon light and laughed at something off camera. I took the wedding photograph down, wrapped it carefully, set it against the wall in the hallway, and I hung my print in its place. Then I sent her 3 words, and I waited. The 8 hours. She did not respond to the text, not immediately, not for 2 hours. When she finally did, it was a single question mark. I did not reply. I spent those 8 hours doing something I had not planned but that I understood, instinctively, clearly, was exactly what I needed to do. I moved through our home slowly, not frantically, not in the chaotic way of someone dismantling something in anger. Thoughtfully. I separated what was mine from what was ours. Not everything. I was not packing her out of the house. But the things that were specifically and only mine. Books, objects, the small accumulations of a self that exists before and beyond a marriage. I gathered quietly and moved to the spare room. I was not erasing her from the home. I was reclaiming my presence in it. By the time I heard her car in the driveway, the living room looked almost identical to how it always had. Almost. Except for the wall. The moment she saw it. She came through the door ready. I was sitting in the armchair, the one that faced the door. The one that meant she would see me the moment she walked in. She saw me first, set her jaw, took a breath, and then her eyes moved, the way eyes naturally move when they enter a familiar space, to the wall. The wall she had looked at every day for 4 years, the wall that had always held the same thing. She looked at it for a long moment, and I watched her prepared speech, whatever it had been, dissolve. Not because the print was devastating, not because it was accusatory or cruel or designed to wound, but because of what it meant. It meant I had not waited for her to come home to start the conversation. I had already started it. Alone. Quietly. In the 8 hours she had spent preparing for a fight, I had already moved. And the wall, with its missing photograph and its replacement, was simply the most visible evidence of that. She looked at me. Her jaw was no longer set. She said, "Where is it?" I told her it was in the hallway, that I had wrapped it carefully, that I had not damaged it. She nodded slowly. And then she sat down, not across from me, on the couch, slightly to the side, the way people sit when they are not ready to be directly opposite someone. And we began. Conversation. I had decided, during those 8 hours, that I was going to ask only the questions I actually needed answered, not everything. Not the full inventory of what had happened and when and how many times, just the things I needed. I asked her how long. She told me, 8 months. I asked her whether she had intended to tell me. She was quiet for a long time, and then she said, honestly, I believe, that she did not know, that she had told herself it would end on its own, that she had been waiting for it to become less complicated without having to make it less complicated herself. I asked her one more question. When you looked at that photograph every day, what did you feel? She looked at her hands. Guilty, she said. Every single day. I nodded, and I said, then we both know why it came down. What the picture had held. I want to tell you something about that photograph, about what it had meant to me before that Thursday morning. It had been, for 4 years, the thing I looked at when I came home tired. When work had been long, or the day had been difficult, or I needed a reminder of why the ordinary hard work of a life was worth it. I had looked at that photograph hundreds of times, and every time, I had seen 2 people who had chosen each other. Genuinely. In late afternoon light. Mid-laugh. Without performance. Taking it down was not a dramatic act. It was a grief. A quiet, private, completely necessary grief. Because the photograph was not a lie. That moment had been real, but the wall it had been hanging on had changed underneath it, and I could not keep looking at something true in a space that had become something else. What happened after Diana and I talked for a long time that night? Not the fight she had prepared for, something quieter and more difficult than a fight. The kind of conversation that does not have a winner because it is not a competition. It is just 2 people trying to understand how they arrived somewhere neither of them intended to go. She told me things about the previous year, about how she had felt disconnected, unseen, like the marriage had become a structure they maintained rather than a relationship they lived inside. I listened, and I was honest, with her and with myself, that some of what she described was real, that I had been absent in ways I had not fully acknowledged, that the distance between us had been a 2-person construction, even if only one of us had responded to it the way she had. That honesty did not excuse what she had done, but it made the full picture visible, and you cannot work with a picture you cannot fully see. The photograph now. The wedding photograph is still wrapped. It is in the spare room, leaning against the wall the way things lean when they are waiting for a decision that has not been made yet. I have not thrown it away. I have not rehung it. It sits there as a kind of honest uncertainty, not gone, not present, waiting for us to decide what it means in the context of whatever comes next. My print is still on the wall. Diana has not asked me to take it down. I think she understands what it is, not a replacement for the photograph, not a statement about the marriage, just evidence that I was here before this, that I will be here after, that the wall of our shared life is not only composed of what we built together, it also holds who I am when I am standing alone. And that is worth remembering. What I want you to know. I am 39 years old. My marriage is in the most uncertain place it has ever been, and I am, somehow, the most grounded I have ever felt inside that uncertainty. because I did not lose myself in the discovery. I did not perform my pain for an audience of one. I did not give her a fight she could push back against and use to make herself the reasonable one. I took a photograph off a wall. I hung something of mine in its place. And I sat in my armchair and waited for her to come home and see it. And in that simple, quiet act, I told her everything she needed to know before she said a single word. That I knew. That I had already begun. That the version of this marriage that existed before Thursday morning was over. And that whatever came next would have to be built on something more honest than what had been hanging on that wall. If this story reached somewhere real, if you have ever had to find a quiet way to say something too large for words, drop a comment below. You are not alone in that living room. Share this with someone who needs to hear that the most powerful responses are not always the loudest ones. Sometimes they are a single frame on a wall, and the silence that surrounds it. Like and subscribe, because the next story is already waiting, and I promise you, it is one you will not forget. See you there.